Honduras that failed also, because like there was this guy who has this great idea about a future city that I think it's actually, but it's the opposite of Marxism. Like it runs on like pure like market, and he tried to implement he just tried to implement it in a city somewhere, and Honduras was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. So then he was like, yeah, we'll do it. And then the Honduran government kind of took over from him, and he's like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. Now that you're taking over.
When was this?
It's like it was yesterday. It was in the past. Like, it was on CBC. Is where I heard it. So it was like in the past 5 years.
No, I didn't. Are you talking about Glen Beck City? Have you seen that? It's like Glen Beck's city plan. It's ridiculous, and it's all like it is Marxist principles, but he frames it.
Wasn't Newt Gingrich his like main campaign promise? I think the new city on the moon. Wasn't that his?
That one was a base.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a city, but it was a base. It was more, I think, if I remember right, supposed to be for military purposes.
I see nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
you need a moon base to blow off the rock.
Yeah. No, that would.
Is it Coruscant?
That would be. If in my lifetime I get to see something along the lines of Coruscant, then I'm interested in it.
Well, it's like a city. It's like just a whole.
It's the whole plan.
I mean, that's a lot of engineering.
That would be.
Is this a real city or?
It is a real city,
okay.
and it's actually just like Fordlandia, it was built from the ground up. And see, it's probably we've probably been a little bit unfair. We should distract you with this picture of Marx, because when we say Marx, we actually mean this guy, who does look. You might think he looks very similar, and he should, because they are in fact related. His grandfather was Karl Marx's cousin. This is Roberto Burl Marx, the landscape architect from Brazil, who was instrumental in designing Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. So before I get into any of the details about it, do any of you know anything about Brasilia? Because it's actually very unique in a lot of ways.
I've heard that it's the
I just told you that, so you.
Engineering.
Good to have you on board.
So a lot of cities were just built specifically to be capital cities.
Yeah, I actually heard that there were a few more was it Brasilia, but then they just cut out a few because that name was too long, so just stuck with Brasilia.
Well, that's a real.
It was more fun to have like 7 Illies in there, but they just no.
Yeah, they had it.
They decided to go with the.
That's where Millie Vanilli came from.
That's Ottawa. We just call it Opt. I live in Opt.
Yeah, well, it's actually, you're actually not too far off, because Brazilians actually do have a penchant for, really cute, kitschy names. I mean, if you see any of their things, and seriously, I mean, if you follow anything that relates to Brazilian politics, you're actually not far off the mark, because a lot of these major movements have these kind of cute names, but I don't think they ever went as extreme as that.
No.
But the point, Brasilia, in case you didn't know, is the biggest city in the world that exists today that didn't exist in 1900. So, I mean, that's one matter of distinction. It was actually built as recently as 1955. Well, construction started in 1955, it was completed in 1960. And it was literally where there was nothing before. It's not like there was a town, it's not like there was an outpost, it was literally just Amazonian jungle. And I mean, the point being is they wanted to expand it and hopefully annex some of the resources that were found further northwest. So here, this is downtown Brasilia here. And if you look, that building in the distance, we'll just be covering that in just a second. But most of the landscaping you can see here was designed by Roberto Burl Marx.
That's cool.
So he was actually, isn't it? There's actually, if you Google shots of Brasilia's highway, they actually have like 12-lane highways that are just chock-a-block with cars. Like it's actually it's a little alarming to see just that many cars on there. But really a city of excess. And you can probably imagine most of these buildings were built in the 60s. Like everything there was original. So I mean, when it first emerged, it was really something to see.
Where did the money come from?
Oh, they borrowed. I mean, that was the point. I mean, I could give you a whole political lesson, I'm assuming. Particularly interesting for you, but yeah, long story short, international banks. Yeah, I think that's probably one. But yes, Burl Marx did a lot of rooftop gardens. Like, have any of you guys heard of vertical farms? That kind of things. Yeah, if you've taken tech, you might have heard of it. Okay, so kind of a similar premise where you have gardens on rooftops. So the point being, you can have development without sacrificing, the environment, green space, all this. So this is the top of like a 30-story building. So yeah, this is from, and I think we have another picture after this. So yeah, this is the vertical view. So you can see. And I mean, he was really one of the first to do that. And actually, a lot of his works are in conjunction with another actual architect from Brazil named Oscar Niemeyer, who did the building that you saw in the distance.
Sure, we're an Oscar Niemeyer.
Actually, no. his full name, but it's something like Oscar Fielho Niemeyer de Silva Suarez or something like that. But obviously he abbreviated it to Oscar Niemeyer. He actually just died a couple months ago. He was 104.
Now don't you feel bad?
Yeah,
Well, obviously he
totally
wasn't working
his fault. Totally his fault. But anyway, this is the Brazilian House of Representatives, and Oscar Niemeyer designed this.
Is that just a giant bowl?
The question becomes, how many of the members of Brazil's House of Representatives throw stuff into that?
I don't think.
I mean, does anything get done? Because that just becomes way too big a distraction.
Okay, well, if you look
First person to hit the bowl.
this is a pro tip. If you look really closely, you can see people in the bottom there, so that gives you an idea of scale.
Right.
So that's a huge bowl.
It's a big bowl.
That's right.
Massive. And there's an equal size.
Upside down.
Well, that's the point, because a lot of his architecture was inspired, because Niemeyer was actually a communist, an unapologetic one.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you can see, all his architecture, he didn't believe in using straight lines, so everything has curves to it. It's supposed to
Why?
be
Why is that inherently communist?
Classic communist.
It's the particular design here that I'm getting to. I'm just
What were
saying
thoughts
that's
on the Taj Mahal?
I don't think it existed.
I think he forgot about the big boxy tower thing.
Yeah, those are
No, but those aren't straight lines, they're actually angled.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay.
But see here, the two, since you brought it up, the half spheres here were supposed to be like the two halves of Brazil, so this is where they merge. But the problem was, because Brasilia was actually, the original idea was it was supposed to be like a socialist paradise, where the rich and the poor lived side by side, where all the government administration was done. But what ended up happening was you had all the rich people living downtown, all the poor people on the outskirts. So you had, the polarization that you had in every other major city. So people started remarking that maybe this sphere here, this was like the begging bowl of the lower houses, begging for the charity of the upper houses, which were the rich people who were just totally unsympathetic. So I mean, a lot of his architecture came to embody these kinds of, very negative, symbols that were kind of going around and still are today in Brazil. I think if you go to the next slide, you can see some of the other examples. This is a cathedral. This is also done by Niemeyer. So, yeah, no, I know, isn't it? It's actually, it's not bad. And then I think the final picture we have here, this. I don't think he was the key architect on this, but I mean, he did. Yeah, this is the Juscelino Kubitschek Bridge. This is also in Brasilia, and this was after the president who commissioned Brasilia to be built. So there's some pretty good stuff there. It's such a young city. Anyway, I've got
City has come along so well.
I know.
Or so badly.
I know. It's like child. I don't know. I had an analogy. Okay, why don't I ask you guys a conceptual question?
Sure.
Where do you guys stand on the chicken and the egg debate? Is that something that you solved a long time ago? Do you guys have a firm opinion on that?
They both taste good.
Scrambled and
Yes, they
fried.
do. Yeah.
Scrambled egg,
Oh,
fried
okay,
chicken.
no, I got it. No, it took a second. I was something mildly intelligent
Oh,
from
you
you.
try scrambling the chicken.
Yeah, no, you could.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Well,
Well, library
you get it. But anyway, so what do you guys think about that? What came first?
The chicken.
The chicken is this?
Yeah, I'm a chicken guy.
I would tend to agree with you.
I would
if step
say
out my
egg.
role for position. Egg.
Yeah, I'd say egg. Definitely egg.
Egg.
100% egg. 130% egg.
30% egg.
Yeah, it's definitely an egg.
I'm going to reserve judgment over the facts.
Okay, so one abstain. In that case, I was expecting a little bit more consensus with this because we now have a more difficult question.
Yeah.
What do you think came first? A match or a cigarette lighter?
Wait, specifically the cigarette lighter or just lighters in general?
Well,
The automatic. Are you
Red
gonna
lighters.
say like the lighter is flint and whatever you hit the flint with steel?
well, still theoretically you could be wrong. That is a
So
kind of-
yeah, so wouldn't it be the lighter then? Because
Well, you'd think so.
flint-
You know what? Just you might have. Sure, go ahead. Any other guesses?
Well, match.
Yeah.
They both came at the exact same time. Oh.
They're both figments of our imagination.
You know what? Yeah.
That
you know what?
neither?
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Would
That
you
was
care to illuminate us?
Well, unfortunately, Alex, you were no. That was actually that you sort of redeemed yourself. You were actually onto something, but as I was afraid you might, you broke the cardinal rule of art style. There are no easy answers. any of these questions. The first thing you have to do is define your terms. So first and foremost, it depends on what we consider a match and what we consider to be a cigarette lighter. Because actually, there's a world of difference depending on how you break it down.
Did the
So if we
cigarette
start
come
with-
before the match, and so whatever they used to light the cigarette was technically a cigarette lighter?
I suppose. Well, what would it be though? What would
Like
you
a
smoke?
lamp lighter.
I thought you were smoking a lamp. I'm like, no.
No, like lighting their cigarette on a lamp.
Like a log. I mean, it wasn't like tobacco didn't come to like Europe to be like widespread until
That's true.
the
No, that's
1500s. They
Yeah.
didn't have their well was just like take up a
Or you
log.
just like wait till
a
a
torch.
fire, light all your cigarettes.
That's the point. I mean, if I'm trying to see if there is actually a basis for what you just
I
said.
think there
Because
is.
if you assume, well, let's live in hope for a second. So, I mean, if you do pretend that the cigarette actually came first, then theoretically anything that got ignited could be a cigarette.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, no, because it could be a pipe. Pipes definitely came before cigarettes.
why?
Because they have instances of Native American pipes from the 9000 BC. I can show you documentation.
You know what, you're gonna.
I work for an archaeology firm.
Do you really?
Yes.
Get the hell out of here.
We can catch up later.
Yeah, no, let's go. God, I leave you out of my sight for 2 minutes.
I got a little tense there.
No, I know well. I mean, Alex is full of surprises. Anyway, so if we actually start, well, yes, that's no argument there. Depending on what we actually call the match that you see in the photo here, and I think, is that the next slide? Is that the, yeah, okay. So these are the matches we're probably all most familiar with. These are friction matches, safety matches. So, they come in the box, they have the coating on the outside, which is actually red phosphorus. And, when you apply friction to the head of the phosphorus, it ignites, and that's what you get. Which is probably the first ancestor of what we would call this match proper today. It was invented in 1826 by an English chemist named John Walker. Now, originally these were strike anywhere matches because they had white phosphorus in the head. You could strike it, it would ignite. Now, the problem with that is they frequently explode. So, original matches were very dangerous. They were called lucifers. In fact, if you go to Belgium or Holland today, that's still a slang term name for it, lucifers, because it dates back to that. Even if you were to leave it in the box, if you were rattling around, theoretically, it could spontaneously kind of explode. Just a little bit of friction would be enough to do it. But the first actual ancestor of what we today consider a match would be 1826 by the English chemist. But, I mean, going off of something that you said earlier, the first real remnant of anything that could burn, to cause any kind of ignition or explosion, that goes right the way back to about, we have here 577 AD. Because really, the wick of either candles or candles, that can also be considered a match if you broaden the definition.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's even older, obviously. Now, if we turn to the cigarette lighter.
Since Prometheus gave us fire.
Yeah, that one, right. If we compare that with the cigarette lighter, which was technically the first origin was invented by this guy, Johann Wolfgang Davies, in 1823.
It looks like, is his face like upside down or something?
I wanted to say
It just looks like there's something really
He
off.
kind of looks actually very similar to Quasimodo from
Looks
What is
like
he doing with his hand?
looks like
I don't want to know.
It's like his hair
beckoning. Does it just make us look like he's beckoning?
It's weird. It's
His
very
hair's trying to go one way and he's trying to go the other
I
way.
don't think he's trying to go anywhere. I think that's the irony of it.
His face looks like it's like, and his hair.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, I mean, and to think this is actually.
It also looks like he could have been giving like the guy who was drawing the finger, but he
Yeah.
just did it wrong.
In those days,
Opted for the
this
wrong
was a
finger.
huge.
I think
And to think that this is actually, I can tell you, this is the most flattering photo I could find of him. So that in of itself says quite a lot.
So when did he invent the cigarette?
He invented this. This is called the Davies lamp. This is commonly known. And this was invented in 1823, so a full 3 years before the match.
And how big
So-
is that?
It was, now this, okay, obviously
this
it's
pocket
not
size?
scale. No, but it was definitely, it was not anywhere near this big, but it
Depends on
certainly
the size of
wasn't
the
pocket.
pocket.
Yes,
You should
that's
really
true.
define your character.
That's that's good. You're learning. But I mean, this was way too big to actually put in your pocket. That's why it went out of circulation very quickly.
Can I just say something about this?
Yes.
I can see it now. Him and the painters. Okay, I want you to get me right as I'm about to scratch my ear. It's so a la mode right now. The pre-ear scratch. It's perfect. And you hurt my face. You hurt my face as I'm about to scratch my ear.